Hey everyone, and welcome back to a new video. I hope you're okay with voiceover again today. And also I'm going to be showing you some cool gameplay in the background of this little zoo builder game I've been playing recently. These are just some of the tutorial levels, but they're really fun and it's really cute and I can't wait to dive into the game further. And I felt it was kind of appropriate for today's video because we are talking about animals and the welfare and well-being of them. So today's video is a little different in terms of topics of what I've been talking about recently and what I talk about quite often. But we are going to be talking about a nail technician who gained a lot of popularity on Instagram. She's also quite big on TikTok. She does have a YouTube channel, but she's not as big over there. And she's obviously incredibly talented. Although not all of her nail art is to my taste, she makes a lot of art with like very sexually explicit imagery on. But you know, hey, I'm not the one wearing it, so it doesn't really matter, does it? And even if it's not to my taste, the execution is still damn good, so like, who am I to judge? What I am judging her for, though, is the mistreatment and abuse of animals. She decided that she didn't just want to be known for her talent or her risque artwork, she decided she wanted to be known for forcing small animals and insects to be a part of her art, if you can call it that at this point, and she did this by cruelly dangling mice by their tails for promotional shots, buying live earthworms and insects, and even encapsulating insects and live frogs inside her acrylic nails. This goes beyond anything that is acceptable or justifiable as just being creative. It is just cruel. So a little warning here, all the images and video clips that I'm going to show you in this video are quite unpleasant, so don't feel like you have to watch. Put yourself first, please. But this was the post which sparked all the outrage, and this is a screenshot from Reddit because she has deleted this post now. But as we'll see, it's not the first time she's done something like this. Like I say, this post has been deleted from Instagram, but the others that I'm about to show you have not. She is still proudly displaying them on her social media. So here we can see that she has literally, and if you're listening to the audio-only version on Spotify, I'm going to describe this because it's disturbing. She has clearly and literally encased live frogs and live ladybirds inside acrylic nails. Sure, they have tiny air holes, but this does not mean they're safe in there. In order for them to have been sealed in there, they've likely been exposed to a high-intensity UV lamp, plus the materials that these nails are made of are not recommended as being safe around most animals. Experts don't even recommend that you apply these kind of nails around animals in the first place. Like if you've got a dog or cat in the room, don't be doing acrylic nails or gel nails or things like that. It's not safe. The powder and the fumes can cause respiratory problems for both humans and animals, including mammals and birds if breathed in. If ingested by an animal, they can cause vomiting and other issues. And if any of the ingredients come into contact with animal skin, it can cause major skin irritation and rashes. Obviously, it's different for different kinds of animals, but does this, and there's been no official studies done on frogs, unsurprisingly, but does this sound like something you think should be quite literally surrounding the skin of an innocent little frog? For frogs in particular, I feel like this is particularly dangerous as well, because for those of you who might not be familiar, frogs are amphibians belonging to an order called Anura or Anura. I hope I'm pronounced that right. I've only actually ever seen it written down. Sorry, I'm a reader, like a big reader, so sometimes I struggle with pronunciation if I've never heard a word said out loud. But this order of Anura or Anura or Anura, I guess. This order has been around for millions of years, with some of the first fossils dating back to around 180 million years ago, which is damn impressive. However, sadly, the number of frogs around the world are declining, and many species are in real danger. It's a huge thing that not many people are aware of, but our frog populations are absolutely at risk. As Tim Halliday writes in his book, The Book of Frogs, frogs and other amphibians are declining throughout the world, even within protected areas. It's now clear that amphibian declines are one manifestation of a major global extinction event, often referred to as the sixth mass extinction. There's too many S's in there, I struggle with that. And as Jules Howard writes the RSPB Frogs and Toads book, this is specific to the UK but still relevant, recent statistics on amphibian decline speak for themselves. At the time of writing in 2018, amphibians are facing extinction at a rate of 211 times greater than would be expected for their taxonomic class, with 2,100 of the 6,966 known species at risk of dying out. This makes amphibians one of the most threatened groups of animals on the planet. For them, the clock is ticking. And there's many reasons for this decline, right? Fungal parasites causing disease, lack of access to clean water, invasive species taking over in some areas, and so on. But with all these threats, it's clear that it should be important to try and protect frogs and toads, right? Not have a hand in killing more of them and encouraging other people to harm them more with your social media content. Now, frog skin is really, really interesting. In fact, all amphibian skin is really interesting because they essentially breathe through their skin, and their skin is also permeable to water, so it's key for managing their hydration and their temperature level, as well as their oxygen level. Frogs do have mouths and lungs, however they use their skin to take in additional oxygen, but it needs to be moist for them to do this. If a frog's skin gets too dry, it can literally cause them to suffocate. This way of breathing, if you want to call it that, is actually called cutaneous respiration, and it's really, really interesting. So T.S. Kemp wrote a great description of it in his book Amphibians, a very short guide. But to try and summarize for you, skin has multiple layers, right? We know this. Pretty much every being with skin, it has multiple layers. On the dermis layer of the amphibian skin, there's this network of tons of capillaries, and because the skin is permeable, these allow loads of oxygen to be absorbed directly into the bloodstream and carbon dioxide to be expelled, again, directly from it. These capillaries also directly take in water, and it's only through this and the water content in frogs' food that they actually ingest any water. They don't drink through their mouths like me or you would. Because water is essentially always passing in and out of frogs' skin like this, it's really important that they stay in an environment which is wet enough, or at least moist or humid enough, because if they cannot take in water from their surroundings, then their water just keeps evaporating from their skin and evaporating with nothing to replace it, and they can easily die. While trapped inside an acrylic nail, a notoriously dry environment, I just don't see how a frog would be able to absorb enough water to live, or at least not suffer greatly. But that's not all. Amphibians like frogs are ectotherms, which means they can't generate heat themselves, and they rely on their environment to keep warm, but not too warm. If an environment is too cold, then the frog will be too cold and can't carry out basic life processes like digesting food or moving. But if it's too warm, then the frog will overheat and die. The moistness of a frog's skin also plays a massive role in temperature regulation. So again, to remind you, she's put an animal with porous skin directly in contact with harmful chemicals. She's placed it in a small, dry environment with no way to control their own temperature. It's a wonder that these frogs didn't near enough immediately die. These poor, poor little guys. I also have to wonder and ask, where did she get them from? And if they survived, what did she do with them afterwards? She claimed in response that she released them, apparently, but depending on where she is, that could be both illegal or dangerous for either the frog she's releasing or the natural frog population in that area. So, according to Jules Howard, and this is just about in the UK, but it's still relevant to talk about, right? He says it's illegal in the UK to release non-native species, and has been for decades, because this can cause like invasive species to essentially take over from native ones and put native species in danger of extinction, right? So I'm no frog expert, but if you are, maybe you can answer my questions here in the comments. Do we know what kind of frogs these are? And if they did by some miracle survive being inside her nails like this for so long, what would happen if she did just release them into the wild? Would they survive? Would this be a danger to other wild frogs? Are there any laws about this sort of thing in America, or is it just in the UK? I have a lot of questions. There's so much to think about with this kind of stuff when you're bringing animals into absolutely anything, and so many people just don't think about it. Like I really love insects. You probably know this about me. I struggle with spiders. They're arachnids, but like I can't be around spiders. That's my limit. But most insects, I love them and I think they're really interesting. I love photographing them. I love painting them. And the last few months, I've been really, really, really wanting to raise caterpillars into butterflies. And I've been researching it for so damn long now, because sure, you can just like order a kit online and then bam, you get caterpillars to raise. But it turns out there's way more to think about than just that. Because not all butterflies you raise will be able to survive in the wild if you release them, so it just seems cruel, and that's something that I want to avoid. But on the other hand, many butterflies bred in captivity can carry certain diseases that wild butterflies don't, have like the ability to fight off and protect themselves from. So if you raise them and release them, it can cause a lot of harm to local butterfly populations. So I'm trying to be super, super thoughtful about like what species of caterpillar and butterfly I get, how I look after them, when I look after them, because now it's kind of getting too late in the year, I think, but I don't want to do it in the height of summer when it's too warm. So there's so much to think about, and I'm trying to be super careful and super considerate before I even think about buying anything to do this, because the well-being of the animals I raise and the well-being of the animals who live naturally around me is the most important thing. You know, these aren't toys and playthings. These are real living creatures that you got to think about. And it's a shame that people like this nail technician don't take time to research and consider these things before deciding to use animals as props. Let's move on a little bit though, but first I just want to say, if you do want to learn more about frogs and amphibians in general, I got some book recommendations in the source document linked below. I just think they're fascinating. I love frogs. So you'll notice in that post, it wasn't just frogs, but ladybirds that she encapsulated in her nails too. And scrolling back through her account, you can see this is not the first time she has done this to ladybirds. Look at these images and watch this video. One of her captions reads, "I had so much fun creating these ladybug exhibit nails, even though they gave me a bit of hassle at the end. It was so worth it." So again, if you're just listening to the audio of this, you may not be able to see this, but it's absolutely horrifying. There are maybe 15 to 20 ladybirds stuffed into each acrylic nail, and they are just piled up on top of each other. Some are clearly distressed, some are stuck on their back, unable to move, others are completely inactive, as though they might already be dead. One view of one of the nails shows about 10 of them piled up on top of each other, gathered around the entrance to the nail, as though they're like trampling on each other, desperate to get out. Like, it's disgusting, and I'm sorry, but this is not art. Again, I'll say it's cruelty. There's another processed video of her making these nails, and this one is even more disturbing, because you can see her putting the ladybirds into the nails, and she is so damn rough with them. Again, for the people listening to audio only, you can see her using both tweezers and her fingers to pick up these insects, and she just grabs them and squeezes them to the point where it's clear she's doing damage. So again, you guys might know, I have a massive soft spot for ladybirds. They are some of my favourite little beetles, and well, I just love beetles, absolutely love beetles. And this year in particular, me and Kyra have been finding so many ladybirds in our garden, on our walks. It has been so much fun. And actually, did you know, according to Richard Cormont, there's actually 47 ladybird species resident in the UK and more than 6,000 species worldwide. They are found on every continent except Antarctica, and I think that is damn cool. I love them. They come in all different sizes, shapes, colours. They're gorgeous. Now, as I said, ladybirds are actually a type of beetle, and their abdomen is really cool because they have their regular flight wings that kind of folded up on top of their abdomen, and then on top of this they have a second set of wings which have actually hardened to form a protective casing called an elytra, or elytra? Again, hope I'm pronouncing that right, I've only seen it written down. And these now hardened wings form a protective case over their flying wings, and they're the bits which are brightly coloured and patterned, which is kind of how we identify ladybirds. The red bits with the black spots, they're the hardened wings. Really damn cool. Underneath these two layers of wings are the abdomen, and this is where all the ladybirds' important organs are. The digestive system, reproductive organs, everything. The nail tech, as you'll see in this video, used her fingers and tweezers to pick these ladybirds up, squashing the back end of their abdomens and therefore all their internal organs. And she squashed and dented the elytra too, and clearly put pressure on the delicate wings underneath. She claims she released all of these ladybirds after her video, but if they had damaged internal organs, or were unable to fly because they had damaged wings, or unable to protect themselves because their hardened outer shell wings were damaged, then they probably just died anyway. And you might just be sat here thinking, it's just some bugs, what's the matter? But ladybirds aren't just bugs, they're a really damn important part of our ecosystem. Again, in every continent except Antarctica. All ladybird species have different diets. Some eat plants or fungi, but most primarily eat aphids and scale insects. Scale, if you're not familiar with them, you might have passed them on trees and plants without noticing, because they tend to kind of like sit in clusters on the body. We had a massive scale infestation on the trees outside of my building actually a couple of years back, and they were absolutely everywhere. And they can be invasive, they can cause a lot of damage. They are essentially parasitic, and it's the same with aphids, who can eat through so many plants if their population is not kept under control. Ladybirds help keep these population levels in balance. If we don't take care of ladybirds, we end up with way more aphids and scale insects and other kind of insects that will damage plants, and then we end up with less plants overall, and then that causes a knock-on effect and so on. Ladybirds are essential to keeping our ecosystems in balance. This isn't all though. So the snail tech, she also had a history of buying packs of worms to pose alongside her worm-inspired nail art, and she fed one of the worms like through a hole in her nail and like dangled it and stuff, and this wasn't as cruel as her like live encapsulations, but still seems inconsiderate and unnecessary in the grand scheme of things. Another time, she encapsulated 2 ants in her nails. Now, thankfully, like I say, there were only 2 of them rather than tens of them, but that's still 2 ants too many. And as you can see from the footage, if you're watching this as a video, she was really rough with these little guys as well. She was using tweezers to squeeze their little bodies, which again likely caused a lot of damage. Again, ants I have a soft spot for, and I'm actually talking about them a lot in an essay titled Navigation in my latest book, Outside, which I'm officially announcing later this week, but it is available to buy now if you want to check it out. And if you do want to find out more about ants, then Empire of Ants is one of my favourite non-fiction books of all time. I absolutely love it. Again, I'll leave it mentioned in the source document. There's also an example of her dangling a mouse by the tail as promo for one of her mouse-themed nail arts, right? And this is so damn dangerous for the mouse, as it can easily cause spinal or tail damage and leave the mouse either in extreme pain or unable to walk properly, which could very easily kill it. Again, I have to ask, where did she get this mouse from, and what did she do with it afterwards? Now, her initial response to all of this was interesting, because her first response was straight up a non-apology. It was just, I'm not changing, blah, 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 you all suck, it's gross. The only screenshot of this I could find was this one, but I do think she maybe wrote more, but this is all I can find online at the minute, where she said, I try to imagine myself doing other content that no longer involves insects, and I just can't do it, y'all. Not only would I be limiting myself from my full potential, but I wouldn't enjoy creating content knowing it's a certain area I can't touch because some people are too sensitive about it. Honestly, that's just life. I see a ton of posts I don't agree with, yet I never try to belittle anyone, so this says a lot about some of y'all's character. I've always vowed to stay true to myself no matter what. This was my first mini Let's Cancel Me, that's her username, so at the time that seemed like the right solution to it, but no more kissy emoji. It infuriates me, it really does. So she wasn't sorry, she didn't care, she wanted to just continue to abuse and harm animals in the name of her full potential and creativity, and just thought people were being too sensitive about it. However, people continued to be disgusted, and as brands she worked with found out, as the owner of the salon she worked at found out, she began to lose brand partnerships, she lost access to the salon that she worked at. They essentially fired her, or decided to let her go because, in their words, they found the videos disturbing, because they are. They also said that as animal lovers, we will never support, excuse, or enable harm to animals, and this finally led her to make an apology. But again, if you need all of I'm okay with people taking time to reflect on things and be like, because, when you have a lot of people hating on you for something, you can have knee-jerk emotional reactions. I do, I have in the past, absolutely, I get it. So if you want to take some time to reflect before you respond or that's fine. But the sense I get from this is that she didn't suddenly learn and do more, and that's why she decided to apologize. She was like, oh crap, I'm losing money, better make an apology. That's all this is. So she ended up saying, hi guys, for those of you who may not know, I did a live frog encapsulation nail set almost a week ago and received a lot of backlash about it being animal cruelty / abuse. It was not my knowledge that it was considered animal abuse due to the fact they were not physically harmed, had multiple air holes, and were only in a small space for a short amount of time. However, I want to apologise to anyone who was upset by the post. My intention was never to cause harm or distress, the frogs were unharmed and handled with care, but I understand that my creative vision did not come across as intended. I truly value and respect all living creatures, doubt, and will be more mindful in the future about how my art / creativity may be perceived. I also want to remind everyone that we've all fallen short or made choices in life we might rethink today. It can be easy to forget our own missteps before casting judgment or threats towards someone else who you know nothing about. I've been respectful towards everyone despite the belittling, ignorant, hateful comments, mentions, and DMs. All I can ask is that you guys return the same respect given to you. To all my social nail tech besties, friends, and supporters, I truly thank you guys for standing by my side amongst all this chaos and understanding both sides. I love you guys for life. And like I say, I might respect this a little bit more if it wasn't only in response to her losing money and job opportunities. She clearly doesn't actually give a damn about the animals, as evidenced by her first response, and how in this one she simply says she's only going to be more mindful about how her art / creativity may be perceived. Not more mindful about how she treats animals. it's very clear to me that she's learned absolutely nothing and doesn't understand what she actually did that was wrong, and I find it infuriating. And I get her caring about her art, I do. And I do think there are ways to include animals and a relationship with animals in our artwork in ethical ways. I absolutely believe that. And again, sorry to keep mentioning it, but this is actually one of the things that I talk about briefly in one of the essays in my new book, Outside. I talk about the way our relationship with the natural world can influence our art, and how our art can help influence the way people think a little bit more about the natural world around us and environmental issues that are really damn important. One of the examples I give is including photographing animals, interacting with them or not in the process. But there's plenty of other examples too. So, for example, if you've seen some of my older videos, you might know I once made a joke video with my dog, Kyra, called "My Dog is a Better Artist Than Picasso," and I called her Poor Casso, and it was a whole thing. And I let her pick out some paint tubes, and then I covered a canvas with paint splotches in the colours she picked out, covered that in cling film, applied Kyra's favourite dog-safe peanut butter on top, and then let her lick away at it. And her tongue, licking up this peanut butter, spread out all the paint, creating this like beautiful, unique piece of artwork. And it was a really, really fun activity for us to do together. We really loved it. Another example is, there are artists who use non-toxic paint and they allow various animals to walk through it and then onto canvases, right? Sometimes it's little ants, so their tiny feet are the things trailing the paint around, and we get to see them walk their usual pathways, and it's not only creating something beautiful, but it's an informative piece about how ant navigation works, which, funnily enough, is something else I talk about in my book. God, it's just quite relevant for this video, isn't it? It's great timing. Others do it with animals like otters and ferrets, so you can see their tiny paw prints, and they'll also roll around on the canvas, and they'll also roll around on the canvas. They sometimes have ice cubes in there that they play with, and it creates like these cool effects on canvas, and like they just have fun with it, And it's these animals having a really good time. The paint is non-toxic, it's completely safe. In those cases, precautions are taken to make sure these animals are never in danger and are never placed anywhere against their will. They're not made to do this. There are unethical examples though. So for example, a while back there was this viral video going around of this elephant who would paint pictures of himself and other elephants, and it was like, oh my god, that's really cute, look how clever he is, he's self-aware, and everyone was going crazy for it, until it turned out that these beautiful creatures had been trained to just move their brush in certain ways in response to certain stimuli, and the way that they were trained was often cruel, it was tiring, sometimes violence was involved, it was absolutely not okay. There are other ways I use nature in my artwork. So I really like to collect like small wildflowers. I never overpick them, but I sometimes collect small wildflowers, and I have a flower press. I press them in, and then I create art and paintings, and beautiful pieces of artwork out of these dried flowers. I often use them to do things called cyanotype prints, which is essentially like sun printing or sun painting, where you expose a piece of paper to the sunlight and you can put objects on top of it. So I like to use pressed flowers on top, and it blocks out areas of UV light, and then you pop it in water and it kind of like activates it all, and you get these amazing like blue and white prints of like these natural objects. It's really damn cool. It's using flowers and the sun to create beautiful artwork. Love doing that kind of thing. So again, are there ethical ways to use nature in your art? Yes. There's also plenty of unethical ways as well, and you just need to be careful, you need to be aware, you need to not overconsume, you need to not hurt anyone, you need to know the consequences of what you're doing. And I think we can have lots of debates about, is this ethical, is this not, is this more or less ethical than this, and so on. But I think what we can all agree on is that violently picking up living beings and stuffing them inside a tiny container made of poisonous substances is not an ethical way of including animals in your artwork. There is absolutely no way to justify it. And I just don't think she realises this or gives a damn about it. And that's kind of why I want to talk about this today. She's literally just gone back to posting regular content now and videos like nothing happened. And I'm just not sure what to think. I actually saw her, she did nail art of Dr. Sandra Lee, who sometimes goes by Dr. Pimple Popper. She's like a dermatologist who she got massive doing like literally like spot picking videos and dermatology videos, and I think she ended up with like a TLC show and stuff, and she's huge, absolutely huge, and she did nail art of her. And then Sandra Lee commented and was like, oh my god, this is amazing, thank you so much. And now I've seen that comment has been deleted, so I think she might know this woman's history because she's probably been told. But for a time she didn't, and she was supporting her, and it's like, oh, a little frustrating to see, Can people make mistakes and learn and grow from them? Yes, absolutely. And I am fully supportive of that. That is exactly what we want to see. I'm just not sure I believe that that's what's happened in this situation, and I'm finding it a little difficult to stomach. If she'd been like, I'm sorry, I was ignorant, I've educated myself about frogs and insects and mice, and I will never do this again because of this, and this reason, I'd be more supportive. But as it stands, with what she's said publicly and how she's been acting, I just don't believe she actually cares about the well-being of animals or insects at all, and I don't believe she fully understands what she did wrong. So I just feel the need to remind you that animals are not accessories. They are not just little toys to be used and poked and prodded and passed around. Their well-being absolutely matters too, and we can't just stuff them into enclosed spaces and squash their little bodies in the name of art. That's just completely wrong. But yeah, I know this was a shorter video than normal, but I just felt the need to have a little rant about this and hopefully educate you a little bit about frogs and insects in the process, and I hope you've learned something. As always, there's a source document linked down below. If you'd like to help support my work, you can do over on Patreon or sending me a one-off donation on PayPal. That really helps. Everything goes back into my channel and my day-to-day living expenses of rent and bills, and also just buying like new things like, books that I can talk about in videos, and camera equipment if I need it, my editing package subscriptions, all that useful stuff. If you don't want to support my channel, I do have merch available, plenty of it with adorable animal imagery on. I got this really cute little snail art design that I drew myself. I worked with a great artist called Amy on this beautiful octopus and book and fungi design, which again, I love. And I've got tons of stuff over on my merch store that you can check out. You can get a Silly Goose t-shirt, you can get some Beetle t-shirts, you can get absolutely anything at all. But yeah, that's just where I want to end this. Thank you so much for watching and listening today. I appreciate you guys so much. Please let me know your thoughts down in the comments. Be kind to each other. Please just have a wonderful rest of your day. Take care, and I'll see you again soon. Bye.